Citrus plants. Almost every citrus fruit eaten today traces back to just three wild ancestors from Southeast Asia: the pomelo, the citron, and the mandarin. Oranges, lemons, limes, and grapefruits are all hybrids of those three, either natural or selectively bred over centuries. The trees are recognized by their glossy leaves, fragrant white blossoms, and the aromatic oils stored in the skin of the fruit, which give citrus its sharp, clean scent even before you take a bite. Citrus spread westward along ancient trade routes, reached the Mediterranean long before it reached the Americas, and today ranks among the most commercially grown fruit crops on Earth. Apple trees. The modern apple originated in the wild forests of Central Asia, in what is now Kazakhstan, where the ancestor of every grocery store apple still grows today. Roman soldiers introduced the fruit to Europe, and farmers spent centuries selecting and improving it, eventually producing thousands of distinct varieties bred for specific climates and tastes. Apple trees need cold winters to break dormancy and fruit properly, which is why they grow best in regions with four distinct seasons. At the peak of American agricultural history, there were thousands of named varieties being grown across the country. Commercial production has since narrowed that down to just a handful, though heirloom growers have spent decades working to bring many of the forgotten ones back. Banana plants. Bananas are among the most produced and consumed fruits in the world, yet the plant that grows them is not a tree. It is a giant herbaceous plant with no woody tissue at all. What looks like a trunk is a tightly packed cylinder of leaf bases called a pseudostem. Wild bananas are packed with hard seeds and nearly inedible. The soft, seedless version sold in stores is the product of thousands of years of selective cultivation. Almost all commercially grown bananas today are a single variety called the Cavendish, which replaced an earlier variety called the Gros Michel after it was almost entirely wiped out by a fungal disease in the 1950s. Because every Cavendish plant is genetically identical, reproduced from offshoots rather than seeds, the same disease scenario that killed the Gros Michel remains a real threat today. Mango trees. The mango is the national fruit of India, Pakistan, and the Philippines, and has been cultivated in South Asia for over 4,000 years. It appears throughout Buddhist history, Hindu mythology, and Mughal art. Mango groves were favorite spots for meditation, and the Buddha was reportedly born beneath a tree that some accounts identify as a mango. The trees are large, dense, and evergreen, capable of living for well over a century and still producing fruit. More varieties of mango exist in India alone than in the rest of the world combined, with flavors ranging from honey sweet to sharp and turpentine like depending on the type. Grapevines. Grapes are one of the oldest cultivated plants in human history, with evidence of wine production stretching back over 8,000 years in the Caucasus region. There are over 10,000 known grape varieties worldwide, though only a few dozen are grown commercially at scale. The practice of growing grapes, called viticulture, has shaped entire economies, religions, and wars across the Mediterranean and beyond. Table grapes are bred to be large, crisp, and thin-skinned for eating fresh. Wine grapes are smaller and sweeter with thicker skins and seeds that contribute color and tannin to the final drink. Raisins are simply dried grapes, but the drying process concentrates the sugar so dramatically that they contain far more sugar per gram than the fresh fruit they came from. Strawberry plants. The strawberry most people recognize today did not exist before the 18th century. It was created by accident in a French garden when two wild species, one from eastern North America and one from Chile, were planted near each other and cross-pollinated. The result was dramatically larger and sweeter than either parent and became the foundation for every commercial variety grown since. Strawberry plants spread by sending out horizontal runners that root into nearby soil and form new plants. They are unusual in that their seeds sit on the outside of the fruit, with each tiny yellow dot on the surface being an individual seed. Commercially grown varieties today are often bred more for shelf life and durability during shipping than for flavor. Pineapple plants. The pineapple is not a single fruit, but a mass of individual berries fused together around a central stalk, each one developing from a separate flower. It is a low-growing bromeliad that takes nearly 2 years to produce its first fruit. When Spanish explorers brought it back to Europe from South America in the late 1400s, it caused an immediate sensation. By the 17th century in England, a single pineapple could cost the equivalent of thousands of dollars in today's money, and wealthy families would rent them by the evening simply to place on the dinner table as a display of status. The fruit contains an enzyme called bromelain that breaks down protein, which is why eating a large amount of fresh pineapple causes that familiar tingling sensation on the tongue. Avocado trees. The avocado has been cultivated in Mexico and Central America for at least 5,000 years and was a dietary staple of the Aztecs long before Spanish colonizers encountered it. Botanically, it is a large berry with a single oversized seed surrounded by rich, fatty flesh. The trees have an unusual flowering behavior where each flower opens twice at different times, once functioning as female and once as male, a mechanism that pushes the plant toward cross pollination with other trees nearby. Today, the avocado is one of the fastest growing agricultural exports in the world, with surging global demand driving significant deforestation and water use concerns in key growing regions like Michoacan in Mexico and parts of Chile. Fig trees. The fig may be the oldest cultivated plant in human history. Archaeologists found evidence of fig cultivation in the Jordan Valley dating back 11,400 years, which would make it older than wheat, barley, or any other known domesticated crop. What most people eat when they eat a fig is not a conventional fruit, but a syconium, a hollow fleshy structure with dozens of tiny flowers lining the inside. Most wild fig species depend entirely on a specific tiny wasp to crawl inside, pollinate those internal flowers, and then die within the fig, which produces an enzyme that digests the wasp completely before the fruit ripens. Most commercial figs are self pollinating and do not require wasps at all. Peach trees. In Chinese culture, the peach is one of the most enduring symbols of immortality and long life, appearing in mythology and classical art for thousands of years. Originally cultivated in China, peaches traveled west along the Silk Road to Persia and eventually reached Europe. The fuzz on the skin is not just texture, it helps the fruit regulate moisture and acts as a minor defense against insects. Nectarines are not a separate species, but simply peaches carrying a single recessive gene that removes the fuzz entirely, and the two fruits are otherwise nearly genetically identical. A perfectly ripe peach has one of the shortest shelf lives of any common fruit, which is why supermarket varieties are almost always picked before they are fully ripe. Blueberry shrubs. Blueberries are native to North America and were a significant food source for indigenous peoples for thousands of years before European arrival, eaten fresh, dried, and pressed into pemmican for long-term storage. The plants require very acidic soil to thrive, which is why they grow naturally in bogs and forest floors, where most other plants cannot survive. Commercial cultivation only began in the early 20th century after a New Jersey botanist named Elizabeth Coleman White partnered with a USDA researcher to develop the first domesticated varieties. Blueberry shrubs are remarkably long lived, with well maintained plants capable of producing fruit for 50 years or more, and they tend to fruit more heavily as they mature. Pomegranate trees. Pomegranates are among the oldest cultivated fruits on Earth, with farming evidence going back 5,000 years in what is now Iran and Afghanistan. They appear throughout ancient Persian, Greek, Jewish, and Islamic tradition. And in Judaism, the seeds are traditionally thought to number 613, the same as the number of commandments in the Torah. The trees are small, deciduous, and exceptionally drought tolerant once established, capable of surviving in poor soils where most fruit trees would fail. The fruit is filled with hundreds of juice filled seeds called arils, each enclosed in a bitter white membrane. Pomegranates are also packed with antioxidants, which has driven a significant surge in commercial interest and global production over the past 2 decades. Papaya plants. Papaya plants are not trees. They are fast growing herbaceous plants with soft, hollow stems and no woody tissue, yet they can reach several meters in height within a single year of planting. Originally from southern Mexico and Central America, papayas were spread throughout the tropics by Spanish and Portuguese explorers in the 16th century and are now grown across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. The fruit contains an enzyme called papain that breaks down protein so effectively it has been used as a natural meat tenderizer in traditional cooking for centuries and is now extracted commercially for use in digestive supplements, food processing, and even certain medical applications. Kiwi vines. The kiwi fruit is native to the Yangtze River Valley in China, where it was eaten and used medicinally for centuries under the name Chinese gooseberry. Western botanists brought seeds to New Zealand in the early 20th century, and local growers developed the larger, sweeter versions sold worldwide today. They renamed it kiwi after the national bird to make it more marketable to international buyers. Kiwi plants are vigorous, woody vines that can live for decades. But because they are either male or female, orchards require both types to produce fruit, with growers typically planting one male vine for every several female ones. The fruit also contains a natural enzyme called actinidin that helps the body break down protein and may support digestion. Cherry trees. Cherry trees are as valued for their appearance as for their fruit. In Japan, the flowering cherry known as sakura is a national symbol, and the brief annual bloom draws millions of people to parks and riverbanks every spring in a cultural event called hanami, or flower viewing, that has been practiced for over 1,000 years. Fruit bearing cherries divide broadly into sweet varieties eaten fresh and sour varieties used in cooking, baking, and preserves. The trees are highly sensitive to late frosts, which can destroy an entire season's harvest after the blossoms have already opened. White peaches and cherries share a similar vulnerability, making both among the more weather dependent fruit crops to grow at commercial scale. Watermelon vines. Watermelons are native to Africa, where wild ancestors grew in the Kalahari Desert and were used for hydration in arid environments for over 5,000 years. Ancient Egyptian tomb paintings show the fruit transitioning from a round wild shape into the familiar oblong variety through selective breeding. Wild watermelons were extremely bitter and valued initially more for their water content than their flavor, functioning essentially as a portable canteen in dry climates. The fruit is composed of about 92% water. Modern seedless watermelons are produced by crossing plants with different chromosome counts to create offspring that cannot produce viable seeds, a technique that has become standard across commercial production worldwide. Coconut palms. The coconut palm is one of the most useful plants in the world, with every part of the tree serving a purpose. The water, meat, oil, husk fiber, leaves, and wood have all been used for food, building, rope, fuel, and medicine across tropical cultures for thousands of years. The coconut itself is botanically a drupe, with a hard shell, a thick fibrous husk, and an edible seed inside. The fruits can float in seawater for months and still germinate when they wash ashore, which is how coconut palms spread naturally across the Pacific and Indian Oceans long before human navigation. Some Pacific Island cultures developed over 100 distinct words to describe the various stages of coconut ripeness, reflecting just how central the plant was to daily survival.